I'm Tracy Sabol. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, update on Pope Francis. The Holy Father remains in stable but complex condition as he battles double pneumonia. Bloodshed in the Middle East. Hundreds of Christians are killed amid clashes in Syria. We have analysis. Deadline drama. A government shutdown is looming and lawmakers are trying to pass a budget backed by President Trump. Plus, we give up. Amid the early days of Lent, some advice on getting the most out of the weeks before Easter from EWTN foundress Mother Angelica. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us. Our top story tonight, the stock market takes a plunge, and now there are fears of a recession. The Dow Jones Index fell nearly 900 points today. The S&P 500 also fell, as did NASDAQ, which recorded its worst day since 2020. Well, President Donald Trump warns the big globalists have been ripping off the United States, but he says tariffs will make America rich again. Still, the president's moves are spooking financial markets and hurting some retirement accounts. The president admits there is a transition period, and it will take time. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tracy, asked directly if he's expecting a recession this year, a slowdown in the economy. President Donald Trump told Fox News he hates to predict things like that and instead said we're bringing wealth back to America.
Oh, I think the tariffs are going to be the greatest thing we've ever done as a country.
Flying back to Washington, President Donald Trump also tells reporters,
we have many companies, as you know, auto companies are opening up plants now. We've had 4 or 5 announced already, but many more are coming. And we're basically going to take back the money, a lot of the money that we've given away over many decades. We've lost our jobs, we've lost our factories.
After imposing and then quickly pausing 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada, Trump says his plans for broader reciprocal tariffs will go into effect April 2nd, raising them to match what other countries assess. During the flight, the president was also asked about what he said on Fox News earlier regarding recession fears.
Are you worried about a recession? Maria Bartiromo asked you and you kind of hesitated.
I'll tell you what, of course you hesitate. Who knows? All I know is this, we're going to take in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs, and we're going to become so rich, you're not going to know where to spend all that money. I'm telling you, you just watch.
A small business owner in New Jersey worries the tariffs placed on Canada and Mexico will hurt his bottom line.
Right now is really difficult as a business owner for several reasons. One, I'm a smaller business, and I'm not really staffed and equipped and knowledgeable enough to know how to navigate tariffs.
China is retaliating against President Trump's tariffs by imposing additional 15% taxes on key American farm products like chicken and pork. And Ontario now charging 25% more for electricity shipped to 1.5 million Americans. Canada's next Prime Minister, Mark Carney, says Trump is trying to weaken Canada's economy.
He's attacking Canadian families, workers, and businesses, and we cannot let him succeed. And we won't. We won't.
In addition, the Trump administration confirmed that 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports will take effect this Wednesday. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
All right, thank you, Owen. And for more, let's bring in Stephen Cates, financial analyst with Bankrate. Stephen, good to be with you. A lot going on, but first, let's start with these tariffs here. As we heard from Owen, President Trump says it's going to be, quote, the greatest thing that we've ever done. However, as we know by the looks of the stock market today, it really was a wild ride, and investors really don't seem to agree with this. I want to get your take on all of this.
So the stock market is allergic to uncertainty, and that's quite a bit of what we have right now. That's the theme dominating both economic and consumer forecasts.
And many folks, as you know, too, are worried about how this may impact their 401ks. What would you say to them?
Well, it is impacting it right now. So to those people, I say, be patient. It's not time to panic. As much as bad news is out there, and certainly everywhere at this point, drops in the market like this, they happen. This is still not nearly as bad as it was in 2022. And I think people just need to be patient and look back at where they were in September of last year, which is just about where the market is today.
Yeah, so kind of hold the line. Do you think we're in for more pain?
Yes. I don't think this is necessarily the bottom. I think that the market could be volatile, meaning that it could go both up and down. But I think the uncertainty over what will ultimately happen with tariffs, what's going to happen with jobs, which is cooling. We are seeing labor market weakness, and we have impending federal layoffs. And I think all of that's going to continue to sort of roil the market.
Yeah, and while the tariffs on Canada and Mexico, they're on hold for right now, of course, recession fears on this trade war are growing. In fact, the president did admit while talking to Fox News over the weekend that there will be some disruption, but we're okay with that. He said, Stephen, what do you think he means by disruption? I mean, what could be coming down the pike?
Well, I think certainly we're living through a little bit of disruption right now. I think whether the market continues to sort of have this panicky, protesty moment is certainly going to be up in the air a little bit. I think for a lot of people, this is kind of like jumping into a cold pool. The anticipation of it is worse than the event. I think waiting to see what's going to happen with jobs numbers next month, with tariffs, with all of these sort of future economic impacts, people are sort of frantic about it.
Yeah, and maybe speculate a little bit what this means for Main Street, for you and me, consumers, small businesses. How do you think we could be affected in the short term, at least?
Well, I think the gentleman that you spoke to a moment ago, the small business owner, anybody who runs a small business certainly is probably worrying about their bottom line, worrying about what's going to happen with the inputs to their business. Manufacturers certainly should be, with tariffs on steel and aluminum. So I think that can come down to the consumer, with higher prices, slower business growth. If jobs and other labor market inputs cool, that is going to ultimately hurt the spending for the consumer, which basically runs 70% of our economy.
Yeah, that's short term. We'll see what happens long term. Wait and see. Thank you so much, Stephen. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
The race is underway to avoid a government shutdown on Friday. The funding bill, which will keep the government running until September 30th, must first make its way through the U.S. House. But the big question is, will it pass? Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with the latest. Eric.
Good evening, Tracy. Yes, House Republican leaders unveiled the 99-page, 6-month government funding bill over the weekend. Now, it would cut several non-defense programs and only slightly increase defense spending along with border security. But folks, we have to remember, by passing a continuing resolution, it keeps the government levels like they were in 2024, negotiated during the Biden administration. And many say that this is no way to run a government. However, most GOP lawmakers are confident it will pass.
We're basically extending the funding that everyone voted for back in December. So there's no reason why the Democrats should not join us and make this bipartisan. There's no additional partisan policy that has been put in this bill.
But Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, the top Democrat on the Appropriations Committee, says a continuing resolution is a non-starter. And House Democratic leadership sent out a letter calling the bill, quote, a blank check for Elon Musk and President Trump to continue their campaign of destruction. And, quote, it fails to address the priorities that matter most to American families. The funding bill would slightly increase defense spending to about $6 billion above 2024 levels, but well below what was agreed on for 2025.
I'm voting no to everything that is related to a Trump agenda that's going to make us sicker and poorer and less educated and more of a fragile nation in the world. That's where I am, and I'm hoping Democrats, we all collectively stand up and fight back.
House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries says the party will do just that.
A year-long continuing resolution is inconsistent with the Bipartisan Fiscal Responsibility Act. And so if Republicans decide to take this approach, as Speaker Johnson indicated, it's his expectation that Republicans are going it alone.
Members of the Conservative Freedom Caucus have long opposed continuing resolutions, but signaled they are open to supporting this one.
The bottom line is he needs the government to stay open so that Elon Musk can finish the job the American people expect, which is to bring accountability and efficiency to the federal government.
And some add President Trump doesn't want to lose his momentum.
He doesn't want to have to deal with a shutdown and who's to blame. He wants to move forward with his programs, move forward with his agenda.
As you heard, all Democratic lawmakers plan to vote no over in the House. Meanwhile, Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie is the only Republican in the House who has said publicly that he plans to vote no because the CR does away with the 1% cut across all departments. Now, the Speaker hopes to vote on it tomorrow, but even if it does pass the House without Democrat support, in the Senate, the bill still needs at least 7 Democratic lawmakers to back it to clear the 60-vote threshold. Bottom line, a lot of moving pieces that have to all fall into place. I'll continue to follow it and bring you the latest. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
All right, to another major story that we are following very closely, the health of the Holy Father. Doctors say for now, Pope Francis is no longer in imminent danger as the result of double pneumonia. The Vatican says that Pope Francis is receiving physiotherapy and has even been following a retreat via video link. EWTN Vatican contributor Valentina Di Donato has more.
Good evening, Tracy. There's more good news tonight regarding the Pope's health. He's shown continued steady improvement, having had a good response to his therapy that he's been receiving. Pope Francis is spending his 25th day in the hospital, and the improvements that have been registered were confirmed by a series of blood tests. The Vatican says this has prompted the doctors to lift his prognosis to no longer guarded. However, due to the complexity of the entire clinical picture and the significant infection of the time of the Pope's hospitalization, the Vatican states it will be necessary to continue, quote, additional days of medical therapy inside of the hospital. This morning, the Pope was able to follow the spiritual exercises held in the Paul VI Hall. He then received the Eucharist and went to the chapel of the private apartment for a moment of prayer, according to the statement. And here at the Vatican, pilgrims and locals continue to gather every night to pray rosary for the Holy Father. This evening, the rosary was prayed inside of the Paul VI Hall. And the faithful we spoke with in the square are saying the news of the slight improvement is a small sign of hope. In Rome, Valentina Di Donato for EWTN News Nightly.
And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly. A surge of violence leaves hundreds dead in Syria, and Christians were among those killed. We talked to EWTN's Alberto Fernandez about what this means for the region. And Lent is just beginning, and we have some tips from Mother Angelica herself and how to ensure these days truly bring us closer to the Lord. Welcome back. An app once used by migrants seeking asylum will now focus on self-deportation. The Department of Homeland Security says the change to CBP One is part of its new Stay Out and Leave Now ad campaign. The app was unveiled under the Biden administration, but was shut down moments after President Trump was sworn into office. It will now be called CBP Home and will automatically update for all users. DHS officials say the new version of the app will help trim enforcement costs and give ICE agents more time for the deportation process. The Supreme Court is set to take up a case from Colorado to decide whether state and local governments can enforce laws banning conversion therapy for so-called LGBTQ children. Colorado is one of the states that prohibits trying to change a person's sexual orientation or so-called gender identity through counseling. The issue at hand is whether the law violates the speech rights of counselors. The case will be argued during the court's new term, which begins in October. One of the nation's most prominent Democrats is breaking party lines and speaking out against males playing in female sports. California Governor Gavin Newsom contended that trans athletes competing in girls' and women's sports was deeply unfair. He made the comments in a podcast with conservative Christian activist Charlie Kirk. Despite being a baptized Catholic, Newsom has been a strong advocate for LGBTQ+ rights over the years, as well as a supporter of legal and publicly funded abortion. But recently, he has vetoed several bills to bolster protections for transgender children and adults. Well, more than 1,000 are dead, including hundreds of civilians, Christians among them, after violence erupted in Syria. Daily clashes broke out in the coastal cities of Latakia and Tartus, and the violence spread to Aleppo and even the capital city of Damascus earlier today. It is the biggest wave of violence since the fall of the Assad regime 3 months ago. The fighting was between forces of the current government and loyalists to Syria's former leader, Bashar al-Assad. So far, more than 1,300 people have died, the majority of them civilians. Syria's interim president says the violence must end.
We will not tolerate the remnants of Assad who have committed crimes against our army forces and state institutions, attacked hospitals, killed innocent civilians, and spread chaos in safe areas. These individuals have only one option: to surrender themselves to the law immediately.
Joining us now is EWTN's Alberto Fernandez. Thank you so much, Alberto, for coming on. We appreciate it. First off, your reaction to all the violence that's unfolding right now in Syria.
Well, it's a shock. Certainly, we've seen violence in Syria for many years, so that's not a big surprise. But I think the level of violence from both sides, the initial attack and then the response, has been huge, and not something that we've seen for quite a while.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, the violence was between forces of the current government and those loyal to former dictator Bashar al-Assad. Is this, do you think, a resurgence of pro-Assad forces or one last gasp?
Well, it's certainly a resurgence in what happened on March 6, where you had hundreds of gunmen killing people, attacking hospitals, attacking roads. Now, the Alawites have paid a huge, horrific price. So it could very well be a last gasp, given the terrible cost in human lives and in civilian lives that this insurgency has caused.
Yeah, and there are reports, as we know, that minority citizens have been killed, Christians among them. Is there any reason to believe that the Christians were targeted for their faith?
First of all, there are confirmed reports of very few Christians killed. Now, one death is a terrible tragedy, and there are not many Christians left in Syria. But there's a confirmation of maybe 4 people that we know for sure. Others talk about 8 people. Whereas we're talking about 1,000 or even several thousand Alawite Muslims have been killed. Most of the violence has been between the Sunni Muslim government and the Alawite Muslim minority, which many of them supported Assad. So Christians have suffered. Some of them have been caught in the crossfire. Other ones may have been targeted, but there's a lot we still don't know.
Yeah, and this seems to be really the first real security test for Syria's new Islamist leaders. In their handling the situation, what do you think, Alberto, that they have shown Syrians and, quite frankly, the rest of the world?
Well, it's been a shock, I think, just because of the sheer carnage. So the question now is going to be, what does the Syrian government do? Does it do what regimes do in these situations, which is kind of shrug their shoulders and kind of go through paperwork to kind of cover it up and paper things over? Or is there a real accounting? You know, are officers or fighters who may have committed human rights abuses somehow really punished? Or is it a slap in the hand? So Syria is very much at a crossroads right now in terms of how the world will see it. And the pressure is on the interim government to act.
Yeah. Do you think at some point the international community should get involved?
The international community is involved in Syria right now. I mean, some of the gunmen and some of the killers have ties with Turkey. These are on the government side. And obviously the Assad remnants are supported by Hezbollah, supported by Iran. So certainly bad parts of the international community are already involved, unfortunately. I think the whatever the West can do is quite limited until we see what the actual government of Syria on the ground can do.
Alberto, so good to be with you. Thank you so much, as always, for your insights. God bless.
Thank you.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in Saudi Arabia today to talk about the war between Ukraine and Russia. After a contentious meeting in the Oval Office late last month, President Trump suspended military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine. On Friday, he said he wanted to end the war as quickly as possible. The meetings in Saudi Arabia will take place over 3 days. President Zelensky is also in Saudi Arabia but will not participate in the talks. Well, in the Middle East, Israel has now cut off the electricity supply to Gaza. This comes a week after Israel suspended the supplies of goods to the territory. A desalination plant that supplies fresh water to Gaza is affected by the power outage. Hamas calls the move part of Israel's, quote, starvation policy. We're also learning that there have been talks between the U.S. and Hamas in the country of Qatar. Adam Bowler, the president's envoy that is, for hostage affairs, met with Hamas officials to discuss the release of an Israeli-American hostage and a ceasefire deal.
It gave me hope that there would be an opportunity to rebuild Gaza, and that there was some flexibility on the Hamas side where there wasn't. So I know there's talks going on this week, but I'm cautiously optimistic about some advances, and especially about some hostages coming out.
North Korea has fired several ballistic missiles into the sea, according to the South Korean military. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff say the missile firings were detected from the North's province of Hwanghae. The launch came hours after South Korean and U.S. troops kicked off their annual combined drills, which the North views as an invasion rehearsal. North Korea's foreign ministry warned that the training risked triggering physical conflict on the Korean peninsula. This was North Korea's 5th missile launch event this year. Up next on EWTN News Nightly, the envelope please. We will tell you which leading Catholic writer is set to receive his own postage stamp. Plus, we revisit tips from EWTN founder's mother, Angelica, on getting the most out of Lent this year. The Postal Service says that a celebrated Catholic writer and public intellectual who shaped political dialogue for decades is set to receive his own postage stamp. The USPS is honoring the late William F. Buckley with a commemorative stamp. In a statement, it says in part that Buckley defined the conservative movement of the mid-20th century. A member of the Knights of Malta, Buckley died in 2008. EWTN founder's mother, Angelica, spent decades on television, and in that time, she gave out plenty of advice that remains relevant today. This includes tips for how to receive the most out of Lent. Mother Angelica said that Lent is an invitation from the church to consider the end of our lives and to focus more on the, quote, ultimate realities rather than what we want the world to be. She also offered 5 tips for making the most of these weeks before Easter. Number 1, offer things that will last over time. For instance, instead of giving up candy, we could stop a bad habit that negatively impacts us and those around us. This could include a bad temper. Number 2, offer each sacrifice with joy. As Mother once said, I'd rather you eat 3 eggs and be cheerful than not eat any eggs and be a grouch. Number 3, remember that we offer these sacrifices because we're sinners. Often we sin out of a lack of willpower. So be ready to say no to something very difficult, knowing that giving in would be much easier. Number 4, during Lent, guard your whole self. As Mother said, acknowledge our sinful past, go to confession, live a whole new life. It's not hard to do. And number 5, resolve to deepen your faith. And how do we do that? Go to confession, receive the Eucharist, and every day remember to pray the Rosary and use holy water. Finally tonight, Pope Francis also has some advice this Lent, including that we should remember if you fall or mess up or break your fast, these are not necessarily failures. In a message for Lent released from his hospital in Rome, the Holy Father says that defeats are not definitive for those who trust in God's love and forgiveness. The sermon Pope Francis would have delivered yesterday also included a message of hope. In the face of temptation, we sometimes fall. We are all sinners. Following our every fall, God lifts us up by his infinite love and forgiveness. And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night and God bless.